can tell you that Wek'èezhìi means within, so all of the land within our boundary. Strong like two people means that you're strong in your Tłįcho knowledge, in your tradition, in your culture. The main culture, language, way of life is the premise behind the whole Tłįcho agreement. So being strong in that, as well as being strong in the, I'll say, quote unquote, white world.
Welcome, Jody, to the Co-Management Commons show, and really grateful that you took this opportunity out of your busy schedule to come on to the podcast. And I know you just had a board meeting, and I know it's been my experience when those are over that it's a bit of a relief and opportunity to regroup again. So I imagine you're probably going through that now as well. But maybe we could start by introducing yourself to the listeners. I know you have had a long career in co-management in the North, so I'd love to hear about your positionality and your career to date.
Okay, well, thanks for having me, Jamie. My name is Jody Pellissey. I'm with the Wek'èezhìi Renewable Resources Board. I'm the executive director. I've been here for 14 years, and prior to that, I was in the Tłįcho with the Tłįcho Renewable Resources Board as their executive director for 10 years. So I have been doing this for a little while. I came north bravely when I was a mere 24 years old and said, hey, let's give this a try. And I haven't left, so I guess they didn't scare me off.
Right. So you're a northerner now, and you're saying, I take it.
Just about. I've just about crossed over to, I've been here longer than I've been from Southern Alberta. So Southern Alberta is still home, but the North definitely has my heart, and this is where I live now.
Nice. That's really interesting, and I would think fortunate that you have had the opportunity to work with two major co-management boards in the North. Like, how would you compare the experiences with both? Do you ever reflect on the Sahtu Renewable Resource Board compared to your current role?
Well, in many ways, things are very much the same. In many ways, things are very, very, very different. For the Sahtu, that's where I grew up. It's where I learned about co-management. I learned how to have relationships with Indigenous peoples that I was fortunate enough to work with in the Sahtu. Such good relationships that I married. My husband is from Tłįcho, and so I have an extra special connection to the Sahtu. And then coming here to work with the Tłįcho people has been just as special in different ways. Biggest difference between the two boards is in the Tłįcho region, they have a self-government agreement as a part of their land claim, and the Sahtu is still working through that. So that I was not working with self-government organizations during the time that I was in the Sahtu, but here in the Tłįcho region, it is very different, and that has led to different ways of managing wildlife because of that added dimension of the Tłįcho government.
What is that extra added dimension? Like, how would you describe it? Because sometimes I know there's a lot of dialogue around co-management versus co-governance, and are you inching into co-governance with the self-governance government there?
No.
Oh, okay.
GNWT, and so the government of the Northwest Territories and the Tłįcho government and the government of Canada, they're welcome to stick to that governance stuff. The Wek'èezhìi Renewable Resources Board, we're responsible for wildlife management, wildlife habitat, and protected areas. And so we stick to what we know in our mandate over here. Working with the Tłįcho government when I say it's a different dimension, it's working with another government and a new government at that. So a lot of learning for me personally, and then at an organizational level, is learning how to work together and work well together. And I would say that we're doing a really good job. We have good relationships with the Tłįcho government and the GNWT, as well as Government Canada, though we work with Government Canada a little less than we do. It's more regular business with GNWT and TG on a more regular basis. A lot of our work is related to Caribou, and so that's what we talk about a lot, and that's who we spend our time with.
Yeah. One of the things that I think would be educational for listeners, and would be easy for you to talk about today is the fact that you just came from a co-management board meeting. And I know for a lot of people that are learning about co-management for the first time, they think about the animals out on the land, all these different aspects. But I know the board meetings themselves and the dialogue are really where a lot of the hard work happens for co-management boards. So it'd be interesting to hear you describe what your board meetings look like and maybe what some of the agenda topics were this time around.
Sure. So I guess the most important thing before getting into what we do or don't do at a board meeting is what our board is. So as you said, our board is a wildlife management authority. They have responsibilities in the area known as Wek'èezhìi. This is the Tłįcho area. That's the co-management border. There are Tłįcho lands that are owned by the Tłįcho government that are within that boundary, and we have wildlife management authority in those lands as well. And then there's the traditional area that's a little bit bigger. Chief Mofwee, back in the day when they were signing treaties and whatnot, took his pen and drew this was their area. And so that sets out the traditional boundary. And that's responsibility of the Tłįcho government to manage. So in between our boundary and that traditional boundary. Our board is made up of, so the co-management part of it is that it's made up of 50% Tłįcho government appointed members and 50% government members. And of the government members, there's GNWT appointees and Government of Canada appointees. And then that group together is a chair. So we're a 9-member board, and with including the chair. And we have equal parts Tłįcho members and equal government members. And when we sit at the table for a board meeting, interestingly enough, this last meeting probably is the least interesting one to hear about. The reason being is some of the things we had expected to receive, some joint management proposals and whatnot, didn't. We received them in a different way, and it just took a little bit less time. Our December meeting was chock full because of different items to discuss, because due to evacuations last summer, we were unable to have our fall meeting. And so we had to put 2 meetings into one in the December meeting. So the February meeting, we were focused on blue nose east caribou, Tłįcho. We dealt with Bathurst caribou, which is one of the main harvested species of caribou in the Tłįcho region, at our December meeting. They're also known as Tłįcho. And then we also had a proposal that we were looking at regarding Diga wolves. There's a wolf management program that has been underway for the last 5 years, and it's just ending this year at the end of June. So we were finding out whether or not there would be an extension request on that program. And then we also talked about wood bison. There's the Mackenzie wood bison are found in our region, and there's a management plan that's in place, and they recently met. They meet regularly, and they're actually in the middle of reviewing and revising the management plan, the 5-year review type of thing. And then we spent time reviewing implementation activities related to species at risk that have been listed here in the NWT. So it's kind of a variety of things. We also, at our meetings, have regular party updates. So GNWT, their Department of Environment and Climate Change, are invited to present. Tłįcho government, their lands protection and culture department are invited to present. Fisheries and Oceans is invited to present, and Environment and Climate Change Canada are invited to present. So that's just a standing item so that we can keep in contact with our other partners and they can keep us up to date on work that they're doing and whatnot. So this past meeting, we had the Forest Management Division give us an update on the 2023 wildfire season, which was a doozy. So it was a very interesting presentation to see. And then we have our usual, financial operations and all those sorts of extras that you have at all kinds of board meetings. So I won't get into that because that's a little less important and a little less interesting.
We don't want to get into administrative affairs here. But that being said, though, co-management definitely comes with its fair share of that as well sometimes. And I guess one of the things I was curious to pick up on it was the whole idea as well of Indigenous knowledge systems. And obviously, there's a lot of people that talk and critique about, do our co-management boards factor in this enough into the decision-making processes? So I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on how the board uses this information and works with the local knowledge holders.
Sure.
And I guess when I ask that too, I'm really thinking about it from a practical perspective because I've been in a lot of conversations with people lately that they want to improve their work in this area, but they're not really sure how to do it basically. So really curious to get your experience on that.
Sure. So for the WRRB, short for Wek'èezhìi Renewable Resources Board, because it's quicker to say WRRB, we it's a requirement in the Tłįcho agreement to use Tłįcho knowledge, scientific knowledge, and technical advice as required expertise, and we do that as best as we can. The board follows the Tłįcho philosophy, strong like two people, and we try to provide as best as we're able to equal amounts science as well as equal amounts Tłįcho. Sometimes the Tłįcho knowledge isn't as available. I think that's probably the trickiest part with an oral language and having that available. It's not as easily as available because, let's be honest, white people, we like things on paper and it isn't always on paper. But that's the benefit of having 4 Tłįcho members plus our chair, who's also Tłįcho, sitting at the table. And we benefit very greatly from their knowledge that they bring to the table. When they sit at the table, the Tłįcho members and the government members, they're sitting there as their own people. They're not representing the agency that nominated and appointed them. So they're able to bring forward their knowledge and feeling free to include that in any of the discussions. So depending on the species that we're working with, we can have with it maybe a little more heavy on the science, but with the Tłįcho knowledge that we have for caribou, it improves and we get more and more information every year that's available to us. And so that really helps the board make those balanced decisions. That is hope anyways, is to have balanced decision making with equal part science and equal part Tłįcho knowledge when they're making those. And there's a lot more work being done by the Tłįcho government in recent years, particularly with caribou. They have their Equo Nahodeke program where they go out on the land each summer, and they're hoping to expand it into the winter this year. They go out and they walk the land. They walk the land just like the ancestors used to do. They watch and they learn and they follow the caribou when they're out in that post-calving summer range that they're on. And they're doing that with both the Kokoti Equo, the Bathurst herd, and the Sati Equo, the Blue Nose East herd. So we've really benefited from that program. A lot more information being available to us, and we have it's a very important guardian program that's happening here in the NWT, and other Indigenous organizations also have equally great guardian programs, but I'm most familiar with the Tłįcho one as we support it and we send staff to be a part of those on the land research that's happening.
Yeah. Are you able to speak more about the Tłįcho philosophy that you referenced, meaning strong like two people? I'm really curious. I hadn't heard of that before is obviously not applicable in the area where I work. So I'm really interested to learn more about that if you could share.
So the philosophy, as I understand, so keeping in mind I'm not Tłįcho and I'm probably not the best person to really detail it well, but what I can tell you is strong like two people means that you're strong in your Tłįcho knowledge, in your tradition, in your culture. The main culture, language, way of life is the premise behind the whole Tłįcho agreement. So being strong in that, as well as being strong in the I'll say, quote unquote, white world. And for younger people going out, getting educated, coming back and being able to get into our positions, executive directors or biologists or whatnot. And strong like two people allows that one person to have an exceptional amount of knowledge to bring forward. And like I said, for the board, when they're thinking that way, they want to make sure that there's collection of traditional knowledge, and that collection of traditional knowledge is done by the appropriate people. Scientists should not be collecting traditional knowledge, and scientists, biologists should be out there collecting the science information. And then at the end of the day, the appropriate research analysis happens on either side. That's then brought to the board, and they're able to use that together. For the most part, we find that the informations, support one another. And I won't say it always makes it easier to make a decision, but it allows them to make a balanced decision using both knowledges.
Nice. One of the things that I'm really interested in as well, because I know you're deeply involved into co-management of multiple caribou herds. And in our region in Labrador, we're also very involved with caribou. And unfortunately, the populations have been declining in recent times. And one of the press releases on your website, I was really curious about when the board decided not to support a calving ground survey. That really resonated with me because in our discussions around polar bear, as an example, there's often been Inuit views about the impact of collaring and surveying polar bears and wanting non-invasive methods. So I was really curious to learn more about what those dialogues might have looked like with the WRRB and how they came to that decision.
So I'm thinking you mean the decision that they made about the Kokoti Echo for the Bathurst herd. They agreed to the request by GNWT and Tłįcho government to extend the current joint management proposal that is providing management actions for that herd. They've agreed to extend that by 1 year. The reason the request came forward was it was felt by the two governments that the June 2024 calving ground survey is a requirement in order to have the most up-to-date information in order to bring forward management actions to the board for their review and approval. Because that's the way it's sort of set up here in the Tłįcho region, is through the Tłįcho agreement. Any management actions that are proposed for wildlife or wildlife habitat are required to be brought to our board. And with respect to harvest restrictions, any kind of total allowable harvest, our board has determination power, meaning that if they make a determination about a total allowable harvest, it has to be implemented versus making recommendations on other management actions. In this case, the board for the calving ground survey, there was a calving ground survey done in 2021 and another survey done in June of 2022. The board wasn't in agreement of the June 2022 calving ground survey, but it did happen. The board did agree previously in 2019 to having surveys done every 2 years for these herds, particularly for the Bathurst herd, which has had such a significant decrease, 99% decline over the many years here. And so they felt that at the size that the herd is, the number of collars that are out on the caribou, and to really take into account what Tłįcho elders have said, is to leave the caribou alone. They chose again to recommend not to do the survey in 2024. I believe the board feels that any information that would be collected really won't be significantly different than what we already have. And they believe that management actions could have been proposed without, or can be proposed without doing that survey. So that's why they went that route. And it was similar to their decision making that they made back in June of 2022 when they had asked not to have that survey done in 2022. So
I'm curious to ask because when you said the 99% decline, it really struck me because in the area where I lived, George River caribou herd also declined by 99%. Like it was really dramatic. And I'm curious if people in your area, well, I got kind of two questions. Do they also feel that the herd is going through a long-term cycle process and that they will come back? And then the second part of my question I'm really curious about is did they ever implement a total hunting ban, or was there always some level of harvesting during the recent times with the decline?
So the board made a determination about a total allowable harvest of 0, so no harvesting of the Coquetee equo. That was made in 2015, and they manage that through a mobile zone with collars and whatnot, and it's quite it it hasn't always been the easiest thing to manage. Let's just leave it at that. We still struggle with it today. But any caribou that are found within that mobile zone, whether they're Coquetee equo, Sawtee equo, Beverly caribou herd, a boreal caribou, nothing's allowed to be harvested within that mobile zone. And the mobile zone is based on the collared Bathurst caribou. So that sets out the size of the zone, and then there's a buffer added to try and to conserve and protect the Bathurst caribou herd. So there hasn't been harvest on that herd since 2015, and there had been a limited harvest before that, only 300 caribou. Remind me the first question you.
The first question I was asking was, does the indigenous knowledge tell us that these caribou will cycle back up to higher numbers again? I mean, that's something that I consistently hear in other regions.
Yes, thanks. Sorry, I went down that rabbit hole and forgot what you asked. Um, yes, I believe the Tłįcho government, or the Tłįcho people, excuse me, have believed that the caribou will come back. They have gone away before and they've come back before. There is a recognition of different kinds of threats to the caribou these days. It isn't just predators on the land. You have development, you have climate change. You also are dealing with a population that harvests with high-powered rifles and skidoos and winter roads, and the access is different, and the threats, the impacts on caribou are different from those days in the past. But there's still a belief that they will cycle back. When that's going to happen, we're not sure. We had hoped that we would start seeing a recovery, and it doesn't seem like we're getting there. We were seeing some really good demographic information that was suggesting that perhaps there were, that we might see recovery, but it's been slow. The other thing is we have 3 herds that are in very close proximity. We have the Sawtee equo, we have the Bathurst Coquetee equo, and then we have the Beverly equo and the last 5 years, they've heavily mixed during the winter and the winter range, which has led to issues with collaring because you don't know until they go back to their calving grounds who they belong to. And so you don't always necessarily have as many Bathurst collared as you would like, thus lending itself back to my saying it can be difficult with the mobile zone. So, but yes, the indigenous people believe, the Tłįcho people believe that there is a cycle because the caribou have gone and the caribou have come back. And I guess the other thing that it always is important to remind everyone is for Tłįcho people, particularly the elders, caribou are caribou. There aren't Sati Equo, Kokoti Equo, Beverly Equo. Those are constructs made by government and biologists to help us manage. And it's not to help manage the caribou, really, it's to help manage the people. And so that's always one of those tricky intricacies that we have to deal with, all of us, the Tłįcho government, GNWT, the WRRB, and communicating back to the communities and making sure that they feel that the work that we're doing is good work and that we're, that we're accomplishing something. So yeah, so we definitely take into account the Indigenous knowledge, the Tłįcho knowledge that is being provided, and back to that strong like two people and making balanced decisions.
I asked about the total allowable harvest just because in our area, when this was happening as well, there was a lot of debate of whether or not there should be like some minimal level of harvest. Thinking about it from the perspective of maintaining cultural continuity and giving community members and some young people at least an opportunity to go out and harvest. And in the end, the total allowable harvest of 0 in Labrador is still in effect. Recently, I was talking to the executive director of the Nunavut Wildlife Management Board, and he was explaining how with the Baffin Island caribou herd, they have now started to allow a limited harvest in that particular herd. And it's been pretty nice to start to see young people and middle-aged people now, I guess, at this point, starting to get their first caribou and to see how that's impacting people positively again. So hopefully it won't be too much longer before Tłįcho people will also be getting that chance again, I'm sure. One thing maybe we could talk a little bit about is your operation there. We're both executive directors. I'm curious, how big is your office and colleagues and resources you have? Like, really curious to learn more about that part of the co-management board operations because I know it's usually the case that we don't have all of the resources that all of the different parties to these agreements have, but we do our best at the intersection of all of them.
Yeah, we're a small but mighty team here at the WRRB. There's myself. I have two fabulous biologists, a wildlife management biologist, Laura Meinert, and our conservation biologist, Amy Guile. And then we have a fourth position, which is our conservation officer, and we're just in between staff at the moment for that position. Yeah, you with a small staff like that, you definitely you get to any kind of files. You can get anything and everything across your desk on any particular day. I'm very grateful for the two bios that I get to work with because I wouldn't sound half as great as I'm sounding right now, if it wasn't for them because they do the heavy lifting and I just make it look good when we come out on the other side. Or I hope I'm making it look good anyways. But yeah, they're fantastic and they're a great support to the board. And together we make sure that information that we're bringing back to the board is plain language and easily understood, and that we're bringing as much back as we can possibly bring to them, like I said, whether it's science or Tłįcho knowledge, so that they can make those good decisions that they've been doing. We're actually just in the process of undergoing, or we're about to start a third-party review. The board has been, we've been in place for a number of years now, and we're looking at reviewing our past recommendations and determinations, and hindsight's 2020 and all that. But with the idea of doing our due diligence is looking at how we've done, how can we improve going into the future, and then we have a couple of technical questions that we're hoping that we can get some extra thought on outside of who we work with now. You are likely, as you said, a lot of your work is with caribou. Really the caribou world is pretty small. when it comes down to it. And because of that, we have a tendency to revert back to the stuff that you know, and you're doing the same surveys and have the same thoughts. And so we're looking for a little bit of outside of the box thinking and perspectives to see if we can't bring that into the co-management system here in the Tłįcho region. And we just will always want to be doing as best as we can for the Tłįcho people and the peoples of the NWT. So
You've combined with your time with Satu board, you've almost been involved now for 25 years. What's kept you motivated and keen to be in the co-management world for that long? I find this really interesting. I reflect on it a lot myself as well. So I'm really curious to hear your thoughts.
well, personally, for me, the autonomy of the boards has been one of the key motivators to stay. This long, I've been allowed to do my thing, and my board supports me doing my thing. I'm not sure that government would be ready for me, nor would I be ready for the government. Too many cooks, too many rules, too many, all that kind of stuff. So personally, board work, there's some days I'm like, oh my God, am I going to be an executive director forever? Maybe, because I'm just not sure that there's anywhere else for me to go. Yeah, 25 years or just about 25 years. Being able to work with the people that I've worked with, being able to learn from the people that I've worked with, both the government and the Indigenous peoples who've all been so kind and sharing their knowledge, and, being able to support programs that and see the Indigenous communities and the professionals and the different programs that are out there, to be able to support that has been really, that's what keeps me here. And making sure that there's maybe some little bit that I'm doing will help make sure that there's caribou in the future. I have two Indigenous daughters, and I want them to be able to live a lifestyle that includes their culture from their father's side of things. Mine too, a little bit. I want to see them to be able to benefit from that culture and that way of life. And so, like I say, hopefully the little bit that I do over here, hopefully that helps keep that going.
Are your daughters expressing an interest now in getting a caribou or anything like that?
No, they're very interested in eating the caribou, eating the moose. Though the youngest was out with her dad on the weekend and they were shooting some ptarmigan, so that was nice. But yeah, not no big game just yet.
Oh, okay. Oh, I no, thank you for answering that question because I always reflect on it a bit, and I think there is something to your having your own autonomy, and I've always enjoyed the diversity of things that we get to work on as well. It's not just one species. There's a long list of ones that you get to be engaged with, and in the early days, I felt like I was becoming a bit more of a generalist, I guess I could say. But the longer you stay involved, you start to realize I actually know quite a lot now about a lot of different species. And it doesn't sound like you identify as a biologist, but I'm sure you do know a lot of biology and stuff over this time of working in the field for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I started off long ago. I in biology. I have a degree in environmental science, and I'm not completely immune to what's going on in a meeting, but I've gone the administrative management route. And yeah, I can only follow so long in a meeting before, the biologists go down their rabbit holes. And so that's why I rely very much on my biologist to please leave me. What? What? Can you summarize what was going on there? That was too much for me.
So
But
with the
so
oh, go
yeah, they
ahead.
helped me out.
I hear you. So, well, we're only fresh into 2024, but is there anything in particular that you're looking forward to this year, or any major projects coming up, or hearing processes, or?
Well, we're not, because we've just recently given extensions on the Tłįcho, the Wek'èezhìi joint management proposals. There won't be any hearings any time on the Wek'èezhìi, definitely not in 2024. There's a possibility of, with the extension for the Tłįcho, of going through some type of proceeding into the fall, but that likely won't include a public hearing. I mean, I'm maybe that's my wish rather than my guess. Public hearings are, they're a beast of their own. So if you can avoid them, sometimes that's nice. And then we're really looking forward to the work that's going to start on the analysis of the Data Management Program, the wolf management program ongoing for the last 5 years. So we look forward to that. And then I guess our third party review, that's probably the biggest thing that the board is undertaking on its own this year. So we look forward to seeing how we can improve, what we've done well, what we haven't, and we think it's a benefit to the board as well as the other agencies that we work with and the Tłįcho citizens for us to just continue to improve. So.
What are you doing with wolf management? I haven't been involved in any wolf management plans with our particular board. I'm curious to hear more about that. What's involved there?
So it was a wolf control program to help the Tłįcho. It was a 5-year program, with the first year being a pilot project where they were doing aerial removals. Following that pilot year, the board resumed their decision making and decided that they would continue to support the DIGA control program, but only with ground-based shooting, and there hasn't been any aerial removals since that first year. And so it's been focused on, there was a Tłįcho wolf harvesting camp, and then others who would go up into, it was an enhanced incentive area. So if you would go into this particular area and harvest a wolf from there, there was significant incentives paid out outside of the traditional payments from the fur genuine. We have the Genuine Mackenzie Valley Fur Program, which provides bonuses and whatnot. And so harvesting in that area just added up the money. So it was a way to encourage folks to go out and harvest the wolves, and they were incentivized to do that. It didn't, the first couple of years, it didn't necessarily increase the harvest, but we have seen higher harvests here at the end. And that's why we're looking forward to the analysis, because you're going to ask me, how did that program work? Did it work? Did the predator control work? And that's what we're waiting to see from the analysis is, because this is really the first time a predator control program of this size has been done on a barren ground caribou herd. We were following similar advices that have been used in either, in boreal caribou programs. So this is really the first time that it's been used out on the tundra for a barren ground caribou herd. So we'll see what the analysis will tell us at the end of the day, whether the program worked or not.
Results from that are going to be really interesting. And like you said, obviously it was done in the spirit of caribou conservation and recovery of the herd. And I'm sure the co-management board discussions were really interesting around that. And if you were to put yourself in the shoes of some of your board members, are they proud of the co-management system that's been negotiated?
I think the board members are, once they come and sit at the table, they see what the board does and what they're involved in, what kind of decisions they're making. I think they are happy with the work that the board does. They recognize that it isn't always easy. It's not, when you have all the pieces of the puzzle, or you hope you have all the pieces of the puzzle to try and make a decision, they really do take a lot of time to make sure that they're doing what's right, first for the animal, and then second for the Tłįcho people and others in the territory, because we are a public board, so we're responsible for Tłįcho citizens, but the NWT and across Canada as well. So I think, and reason that I feel confident in saying that is because I've seen board members or heard board members on the radio speaking in their own language, in the Tłįcho language, telling people about the board meetings, about the decisions that are made, or in meetings talking about difficult decisions that not everybody has always liked, and basically standing up for the board and supporting them. So saying that, if you're not on the board, other Tłįcho citizens, I think we're still new in that not all Tłįcho citizens realize that there's a WRRB that exists and that is over here, making decisions and recommendations on behalf of wildlife for them in their region. So we're always working on that, trying to improve our communication and letting people know that, hey, we're over here and this is what we do. So.
That's a good indication that you have a solid board if people are publicly on radio defending board decisions. And I take it, maybe I'm assuming wrongly, but I assume that under the Tłįcho agreement as well, the decisions are all made through consensus at the board level. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. GNWT, we're NWT, man, consensus-based decision-making all the way, but including our
No,
government. But yes, we do that here at the board too.
no.
Some days the discussions take a long time.
Yeah, it takes time, but I believe that at the end of the day, you're going to get better decisions. I've been on boards and in environments where people do everything they can to get the majority vote with Robert's Rules of Order, and that seems to be more like warfare sometimes, and you see people trying to outmaneuver each other and stuff. So I think if you have board members that are on the radio publicly defending a consensus, that's a really good place to be for sure.
Yeah, I can't say enough about past and current board members. They're all really, really fantastic. They come to the table ready to listen, ready to discuss, and they take it very, very seriously and can't ask for more than that.
Well, it's a Friday afternoon. I know it's a little bit earlier for you, but I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And I'd like to invite you to come on again sometime if there's a particular project that you would like to highlight, or maybe one or both of your biologists might like to speak on a particular co-management topic. And of course, your board members themselves, it would be really interesting to hear from some of the Tłįcho people that are serving on your board. So anytime, reach out, and hopefully this will get heard and people learn more about the good work that you're doing.
Well, thank you. Appreciate you contacting me and getting in touch, and we'll stay in touch for sure. And yeah, if there's something that comes across your desk that you think would be something that would be of interest, and my board members and biologists are much more interesting than me, so they're probably better. You want to talk to them instead of me.
You're being humble. All right, you take care.
Thanks, Jamie. You have a great day.
That was really interesting for me. I always enjoy talking to other executive directors who are working with co-management boards, and in many cases, they also have been created because of modern day treaties. So it was certainly fun to meet Jody Pellissey for the first time and learning from her 25 years of experience in co-management, and being able to reflect on the differences between having worked in two different land claim regions, I think is a rare opportunity, and not very many people have done that, I would suggest, in Canada. And obviously learning more about the Wek'èezhìi Renewable Resources Board was also very insightful about the structure, what the different priorities have been. And like so many of us in the Canadian North, obviously Caribou is a very dominant theme and something that their organization is putting a lot of effort into, but also many similarities on how different co-management boards are working hard to make sure local Indigenous knowledge is included in our work. And in this case, the Tłįcho people obviously are very influential and have a lot of influence, it sounds like, in how work gets done. Of particular interest to me was some recent decisions that the WRRB has done with relation to science and advocating or pointing out that maybe it doesn't need to be done on such a regular basis if the benefit is not going to outweigh the impact of the science activities on the animals, for example. So I found all of that really interesting. I hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to sharing another podcast with everyone really soon, and hope you take care. Hi, I'm Dr. Jamie Snook, and thank you for listening to another episode of the Co-Management Commons Show. Honoring the spirit and intent of agreements with Indigenous peoples is an important form of reconciliation and social justice, and educating ourselves about opportunities with co-management is time well spent. This conversation continues, so please like, share, subscribe, and visit www.comanagement.ca. Join me again next time for another interesting discussion about the co-management of fish and wildlife in Canada and around the world.